Hello, good morning, and welcome to this exciting week of business. Big talking points in the world of business as OPEC has decided to call. Also, we'll look at big stories from the Forex point of view. My name is Blyden Kim, and it's Business 360. In today's Business 360, the big headlines would be expectations of economic data for the week. We're starting from there. Economic data in the week would be the biggest outlines for many conversations and output. It will be a busy week that showcases top payroll, the non-farm payroll from a US point of view, as well as from African point of view. We'll also get to see interest rates. And in US, there's also going to be the job jobs around the world. There will be big talking points regarding inflation rates and will be released for South Korea, Switzerland, Mexico, Philippines, Indonesia, and Turkey, and Central Bank of India, Australia, New Zealand, Poland, and Israel will be at center point. Israel will also decide on the course of monetary policy. Looking at PMI figures. PMI figures are set to show the state of the manufacturing sector in China, India, Russia, South Korea, Canada, Spain, and Italy. Finally, we'll also get to talk about inflation rates and interest rates and GDP growth from an African perspective, the African countries. Moving to Bitcoin, an exhibition that will be taking place in the moon. $1.7 million Bitcoin bounty to be sent to moon in an interplanetary exploration incentive. A company specializing in social intelligence for the cryptocurrency ecosystem, Lunar, has announced its intention to send a treasure chest of 62 bitcoins valued at approximately $1.76 million to the moon. The Bitcoin bounty, dubbed as Nakamoto 1, will only be accessible to the first space traveler who reaches the moon and obtains the private key of a crypto wallet engraved on the lunar outpost, Map rover, which will be launched into space later this year. The company said in an official press release published on March 23rd. To achieve that, Lunar partnered with Lunar Outpost, animation studio Golden Wolf, and Bitcoin developer tools company Hero to fund the projects through the sale of an NFT collection. According to the firm, the ultimate goal is to inspire the next generation of interplanetary exploration. So Bitcoin is moving to the moon, and I just hope the first person to get the keys will get to have the Bitcoin and have an exploration of it. Well, big talking points in the coming years to see how that will pan out. In Japan. Japan has begun purchasing Russian crude oil above the $60 a barrel cap, breaking the Western Allies' tanks to an exception authorized by the United States. As many European nations weaned themselves off Russian oil in response to the invasion of Ukraine, Japan stepped up its purchase of Russian natural gas. Japan has almost none of its own fossil fuels, heavily relying on imports for much of its energy needs. Some analysts believe this dependency heavily influenced Japan's hesitancy to fully back Ukraine against Russia. To date, Japan is the only group of 7 members not to have supplied Ukraine with lethal weapons. Question is, what can Japan do in this case? They're depending on oil and fossil fuels, and Japan and Russia doing business amid the sanction from Western communities. The Nigerian business outlook. External reserves fall by $1.46 billion in 2 months. Nigeria's external reserve fell by the said amount between January and March, according to figures obtained from the Central Bank of Nigeria. The reserves ended February 27, 2023 at $36.67 billion. According to CBN's data on movement of external reserves on Sunday, the reserves, which stood at $36.99 billion as of the end of January 1, 2023, fell to $35.53 billion at the end of March 30, 2023. At the last Monetary Policy Committee meeting in Abuja in March, the Governor CBN attributed the 0.7% decline in the external reserves to the fall in crude oil price. And that's a concern from that angle. So looking at perspectives and stories around Nigeria. The federal government's borrowing from China has grown by 209.15% under President Muhammadu Buhari's administration. This is as total bilateral loans rose by 219.91% from $1.58 billion as of June 2015 to $5.07 billion in December 2022. Total borrowing from China rose from $1.39 billion to $4.29 billion in the period under review. Available data from the Debt Management Office revealed that Chinese loans make up 84.73% of the total amount Nigeria owes to other countries of the world. The remaining 15.27% spread across France, Japan, India, and Germany. And according to the Debt Management Office, loans from China are concessional loans with interest rates of 2.5% per annum, have a tenure of 20 years, and grace period moratorium of 7 years. That's an outlook regarding debts in the country and debts from China. Still looking at the debt office. The domestic debt owned by state government and the Federal Capital Territory Administration rose to 5.33 trillion naira as of the end of December 2022. The subnational domestic debt stock was 4.46 trillion naira by the end of 2021, which means it rose by 870 billion naira within 1 year. The latest figures released by the Debt Management Office (DMO) indicated that Lagos State recorded the highest domestic debt as of the end of the fourth quarter of 2022, with 807.21 billion naira. This followed by Delta State with 304.25 billion naira and Ogun State with 270.45 billion naira. On the other hand, the lowest debt was recorded by Jigawa State with 43.95 billion naira, followed by Kebbi State and Katsina State with 61.31 billion naira and 62.37 billion naira respectively. In the state debt profile breakdown, Abia owed 103.7 billion naira, Adamawa 124 billion naira, Akwa Ibom 219.2 billion naira, and Anambra State 77.4 billion naira, while Bauchi borrowed 143.6 billion naira, Bayelsa 146.3 billion naira, Benue State 141.3 billion naira, and Borno 96.1 billion naira. The details for the rest of the state's debt status are stated in the DMO report. Welcome back from that swift break. It's Business 360. My name is Bladon Kim, and we'll be looking at the state of things with Wema Bank. As Wema Bank PLC has appointed Morocco Hussaini as the substantive managing director and chief executive officer effective April 1st, 2023. After serving in acting capacity since January 1st, 2023, Hussaini will succeed Ademola Adebisi following approval by the Central Bank of Nigeria, according to Wema Bank. It stated that Hussaini's journey with Wema Bank began in 2012 when he joined as the executive director. Before his appointment as MD and CEO, he served as deputy managing director for the last 4 years, a role where he demonstrated the capacity to lead the bank to greater heights as it continued to evolve into a financial powerhouse. With over 25 years of experience, including more than 16 years at senior to executive managing levels, Hosseini was the MD and CEO of MG Inesco, a principal investment and financial advisory firm. He had also served as vice president at the Renaissance Capital. He was an associate at Scudder Salomon Smith Barney and Citigroup Global Markets in London. We can only wish him success in his endeavor with Wema Bank. It would be a good time to move to global economy to see the outlooks of data released in the morning, as well as the perspective within the economic globe. Let's begin with economic calendar. Expected data releases for today, Monday, April 3rd, 2023. At around 12:50 a.m. this morning, it's indicative of some positivity. The Bank of Japan's index for big manufacturers sentiment tumbled to 1 in the first quarter of 2023 from 7 in the fourth quarter of 2022, missing market consensus of 3. This was the lowest reading since the fourth quarter of 2020, with the index falling for the 5th straight quarter, as the banking crisis in the US and Europe added to uncertainty of already slowing global growth. Let's also look at the index around 2:45 a.m. this morning. According to market outlines, we've seen what happened at 12:50 a.m. in the morning, the JP Tarkan Large Manufacturers Index, which we've talked about. Let's move to the data release in the early hours of this morning. We'll get to talk about the US ISM manufacturing PMI that will take place around 3 p.m. Expected data around 3 p.m. would be that of the Manufacturing Purchases Managers Index in the US. Previously stood at 47.7, but the actual is expected to come out around 3 p.m. The focus is at 49, indicating improvement in the manufacturing status in the US. But the CASIM China General Manufacturing PMI unexpectedly fell to 50 in March 2022, from February's 8-month peak at 51.6, missing market focus at 51.7. The latest result highlighted growing doubts among the strength of Chinese recovery momentum amid ongoing property downturn and global financial uncertainty in China. We've seen the index in the afternoon, which is that of the US PMI. Let's look at the state of things regarding economy in Africa. Morocco's GDP grew by 0.5% year-on-year. Morocco's GDP grew by 0.5% year-on-year in the fourth quarter of 2022, compared with a 7.6% advance in the same period last year. The expansion was driven by external demand in a context of high inflation and an improvement of the national economy need for financing. The agricultural sector contracted by 15.1% compared with a 17.8% expansion last year, and fishing activity slowed to 12.3% from 53.4%. Also, industrial activities shrank by 2.4% after rising 5.4%, particularly due to a fall in mining and a slowdown in manufacturing, construction, and utilities. Meanwhile, the services sector grew 0.4%, less than it was, and the struggles have been that of all the sectors regarding construction and utilities. But the concern has been hugely in the services sector, which grew only 0.4%, less than expected. Let's move to the market to see what the outline would be soon. But first, the 5.1% on a year earlier was an indication in the economy due to a slowdown in transportation and warehousing, which was at 7.1% against 16.1%. Financing and insurance also suffered that slowdown. Education, health, services rendered by general public administration, Real estate and trade and repair of vehicles also struggled in Morocco. Let's look at the charts indicating Morocco's GDP annual growth rates. The charts. Annual growth rates in GDP for Morocco had moved from the negative zone, which took place as of January 2020 at negative 0.8%, which further went down July to negative 15.2%. But the direction changed in 2021 and went further upward to 14.2% as of July 2021. But by approaching January 2022, it began to slow down and slowed on consistent basis, a little here, a little there. As of January 2023, it stood at 0.5%, indicating a slowdown in the annual GDP growth in Morocco, meaning businesses have not taken center stage the way it ought to be. Let's look at the state of things in the commodities market. The big talking point had been this one. Saudi Arabia and other OPEC Plus oil producers on Sunday announced voluntary cuts to their production amounting to around 1.15 million barrels per day in a surprise move that said was aimed at supporting market stability. The group had been largely expected to stick to its already agreed 2 million barrels per day cuts when its ministerial panel, which includes Saudi Arabia and Russia, meets virtually today. Last October, OPEC Plus, which comprises the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries OPEC and allies led by Russia, agreed output cuts of 2 million barrels per day from November until the end of the year, angering Washington. The pledges bring the total volume of cuts by OPEC Plus to 3.66 million barrels, equal to 3.7% of global demand. The latest reduction could lift oil prices by $10 per barrel, according to investors and analysts. Quite concerning from that standpoint. But this morning, oil surges on surprise cuts from OPEC Plus. WTI and Brent's futures surged as much as 8% this morning, hitting their strongest level in a month after OPEC Plus announced a surprise production cut. This complicates the outlook for inflation and interest rates, as investors had been betting that easing price pressures would give central banks room to pause the current tightening cycle. But it's not turning out the way many expected. Let's move to the market to see what this and how it has impacted the energy market this morning. Let's look at the price of crude oil, Brent crude, amid these output cuts from OPEC. The morning market has shown some gain in the market as anticipated by analysts and investors, currently at 5% increase after reaching 8% high this morning. Crude oil, the WTI crude, current price $79 US per barrel. For Brent crude, which is Nigeria's price benchmark, as $83 US per barrel, upward by 5.08% appreciation. But it seemed to affect natural gas on the opposite negatively, dropping by 0.1387 point, a negative 6.2% decline for natural gas, gasoline, heating oil, coal, a little here, a little there. Let's see the agricultural market and the perspective within it. The price of soybeans and the rest of the agricultural markets. The agricultural outlook has been gaining also this morning, upward by 7.7 points for soybeans, current price $1,518 per bushel. For wheat, current price is $704 per bushel, upward by 12.18 points, a 1.76% appreciation. Number is downward. Palm oil has gained 146 points, a 3.86% appreciation, and the price of palm oil in the market now is attempting to go back to the 4,000 mark. It's 3,907 Malaysian ringgit per ton. Let's look at the foreign exchange market. We'll look at the metal market also, the metal market this morning. What is the state of things regarding gold? Gold price this morning has shown some slight decline, $1,966 per ounce. Silver, $23 per ounce. The metal market seems to be struggling this morning, not really affected by the OPEC Plus output conversation. Time to look at the foreign exchange market. The Norwegian krone led commodity currencies higher in early morning trading in Asia after OPEC Plus announced a shock oil production cut. It affected the krone from Norway. The group's decision to reduce production by more than 1 million barrels a day after prior assurances that it would hold supply steady risks adding the global pressure, inflationary pressure, and could spur central banks to keep policy tighter for longer. The krone gained about 0.4% to around 10.43 per dollar this morning. It lost roughly 6% in the first quarter, making it the weakest group of 10 currency this year as oil slumped. Crude fell to a 15-month low last month amid the banking sector chaos before recovering some ground. The currency of Japan also, a major importer of oil, weakened 0.3% to 133.31 per dollar today after depreciating 1.3% last quarter. It fell 0.3% to 144.48 per euro. Let's move to the market to see what the majors are doing against the crosses. The euro against the US dollar against the naira. The morning market has shown some slight gain in the market. For the euro against the US dollar, it's 1.08 US dollar equaling 1 euro. It's gone past the 1.07 mark. For pound against the US dollar, it's still at 1.23, but a slight gain this morning. The Aussie, the Australian dollar against the US dollar, is gaining slightly. The US dollar is still struggling by beats in the market. Let's look at Naira's perspective against the majors. The euro against the naira, the US dollar against the naira. The market has been at that range, 459 naira equaling 1 US dollar. For the euro, it's still at the 500 mark, just dropping slightly this morning by 1.23 points. A negative 1.23 points, reflecting a negative 0.25% decline for the euro against the naira, meaning naira had gained slightly. For the pound against the naira, it's 568 naira equaling 1 pound. The pound struggling slightly at 0.59 points against the naira. Let's go to the parallel market to see how this effect is taking place in the black market. The parallel market, naira's performance in the parallel market. Still within the normal range, 750 naira equaling $1 at buying rate and selling rate 746 naira equaling $1. For the pounds to naira, 926 naira equaling 1 pound and 910 naira equaling 1 pound at the selling rates. For euro to naira is 795 at a buying rate and 781 naira equaling 1 euro at the selling rate. Let's move to the cryptocurrency market now. After x-raying what's happening with the fiat, let's look at the digital market. Bitcoin is moving upward. It's gone past the 28,372 mark, rather gone past the 28,000, and current price is 28,372 mark. Moving upward 298 points, a 1.06% appreciation. The crypto market looks solid this morning. Ether also gaining 22 points. Cardano doing slightly well, with Solana is slightly downward and Ripple slightly downward this morning. Let's look at the stock market as we hope to draw the curtain on this session of Business 360. Equity markets in Europe traded near the flat line on the first trading session of April, with the pan-European stock 600 up just 0.1%, but with all stocks rallying 4% following a surprise announcement by OPEC to cut production further, affecting the market. Among single stocks, Hives was under pressure after the Financial Times reported the M&G Investments and two others will vote against a private equity takeover of the British Events Group, while LNG firm Exma was also in focus after top shareholders Forex announced a minority buyout. Finally, investors look ahead to final manufacturing PMI data from major European countries to gauge the economic health of the region. But while we anticipate to see the outline of today's market, let's quickly look at the African stock market. The African stock market and details of it, how the market is responding to the activities of OPEC cut. And we can also have a look at other markets, the American market, stock market, the European stock market, and Asian stocks. While waiting for that to see what the outline could be, we'll get to talk about it because of shortage of time. But the Asian stock is ready for grabs. Let's look at the Asian stock market this morning, how it's gaining. We're seeing it's been on the positive from the Japanese 225 to the Shanghai market in China, upward by 24 points. The CSI 300, the Shanghai 50, all gaining this market amid OPEC cuts. It's affecting, bringing positivity in the Asian market. Let's look at the African market then. The African market this morning. Well, from an African point of view, Nigerian market is on the downward path, negative 1.21% at the opening of this week's market amid the concerns in the market. But from a South African point of view, it's gaining 302, SA 40 and SA All gaining 350 this morning. Egyptian Tati gaining 399. For Nairobi, it's gaining also, but the Nigerian market seems to be on a slump. Early slump of 663 also index. This is where we draw the curtain on today's edition of Business 360. My name is Blyden Kim. Thank you for watching.